So welcome back. It's one of our final classes talking about East Asian management. And we're talking now about leadership across cultures, specifically leadership in the East Asian area, China, Japan, Russia, Vietnam. This is an opening thought that's interesting. The idea that many CEOs in many countries, they are saying that the biggest problem, the biggest challenge is leading diverse cultures. So over 1,000 CEOs in more than 50 countries named leading diverse cultures as one of their top concerns, threatening the competitiveness of their organization. This is just one quote. Another quote that relates to it is in some of the books I have shown you guys. There has been a study of 28,000 research articles on leadership and international management. And of 28,000 articles on international management and leadership, the idea of international is terrible. It's usually talking about just activities in one country for that same country. So it's not really international. Some people say, I'm the international champ, or I'm the champion of the world, but you're only talking about your friends in your neighborhood. It's not really international. And when you are going international, outside your group of friends, or your city, or your state, or province, values change significantly, even inside your country. Definitely when you cross outside your national border. And a lot of people, they might talk about it, and they might think about it a little bit, yeah. But when they do something, even when they go on a vacation, or especially when they're going on a work tour, they don't really think about how things have changed and how you have to change to be a leader in different areas, because people are different. They think differently. It's not just 1 + 1 is 2 and it's different versus 3 or 4 in other countries. Some people, for example, me, I go eat when my stomach tells me I'm hungry. When I hear the gurgle, gurgle, I eat, or if it's noon. But in places like Korea or China or Japan, some places here, those people very often will go eat, not related to your brain, not related to your stomach, not related to the time of day. They will go eat just because they see other people around them, leaders around them, senior people around them. Maybe they're hungry or thirsty, so I should go just to give food to them. That whole idea of group orientation spins my mind. It's very hard for me to understand that that concept of people aren't going to eat because of their stomach. And so leadership is the same. Don't assume leadership is the same everywhere. So we've already talked about this. We've talked about how some places call it different things, and it can have different names, but there are significant differences. The idea of one person in control of the information and one person making all decisions is popular in one area, versus in other areas, the information is completely open. Anybody can access the information, and each person is generally required to do anything they can to grow the organization. Very different in other places, versus this person may not be, I have seen people in Korea where they're the top of an organization and they won't even give a credit card. Sorry, not a credit card. They won't even give a name card to somebody lower in the hierarchy, because they think they are helping the system if they appear very high level and take care of people at a different level differently. So they're not going to be actually doing the ditch digging or the construction work, or they're not actually doing the day-to-day activities. They're only doing that top of the hierarchy thoughts and actions, versus in other countries, that participative style is very much encouraged, as it is in other areas. So make sure you're aware of those. So what is leadership? How do you do it? The foundation of leadership. We started talking about this last class. Leadership's influencing people to direct their efforts towards achieving something. Hopefully it's going to be mutually beneficial. We've talked about that. It is obviously important in the study, and there have been many, many studies, dozens of thousands of studies related to leadership, especially international management. But yet, again, most of those studies on international management and leadership are not international at all. They're just looking at people, assuming people in one area, working with other people in this area. Sometimes they are including maybe one other country or another, like it's an American study with one person from Mexico coming to interact with them, or one person from France coming to interact with them. It's not really a big international study. So what do we need to think about? What do we need to talk about? Leadership's like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know what? When you see it, some people may like it, some people not. Another one, a leader is best when people barely know he exists, who talks little, and when the work is done and the aim is fulfilled, people will say, we did this ourselves. Now, this could be argued and should be argued by you. So, Jungho, could I ask you to criticize these? What is good? What is bad? What do you think might not apply or might be a problem with this?
Maybe they are defining leadership as they apply to every culture.
Okay, could be. He's not really talking about culture. He's not really talking about how people are different. Great. What I was just saying before this slide, in some ways, contradicts this. So does anybody understand what I'm talking about? Are we on the same wavelength? Are we talking the same language? Do you understand my value, my intention?
I'm not entirely sure if I understood your wavelengths, but I would say because leaders are so different and have different styles, one leader might be an alpha who stands out and wants to be seen and is good at what he does, but another maybe the style like they describe it here. So yeah, it's very hard to just say a leader should be like this.
Okay, let's take that idea and run with it. I just gave you an example of a leader and the example of their business card, their name card. That leader would not give his name card to new staff in the company because they're at different levels and they're not supposed to be friends. They're not supposed to be friendly. They're not supposed to be really talking too much back and forth. And so how does that relate to this? That whole idea of the triangle. What's the idea with the triangle? Jacob here or Uluk Beck, can you comment on that? Anybody? I see this as very different than what we're generally teaching.
Isn't it then related to a hierarchy structure?
Yes.
But I would say, isn't there a difference between a boss who's basically on top and just bosses people around and a leader who should support everyone and talk to everyone?
Okay, good point. Exactly, that's what I wanted to talk about. Can you explain a little bit more about how you just saw there could be confusion there? And then that second part you said, that's what we're focused on today. So what exactly did you just say? Could you break that down a little bit more about the leader that gets involved and the hierarchy or the centralization of the information?
Yeah, so I think a boss is more focused on hierarchy. He doesn't want to talk maybe to the lowest employees because he wants to keep his power and only talk with people on his level. But I think a leader should care for everybody because he wants to support everyone in their own way. And there are different ways to do it. But in this understanding of a leader, I think you should talk to everyone in the company, not only the people on your hierarchy level, but also lower people or lower ranked people.
Right. So if we take a look at a big corporation, maybe Samsung, for example, or a corporation like Lego, or once upon a time Volvo when it was in Sweden. Now it's Chinese, but originally when there were Scandinavian big companies, the leaders of those companies sometimes would take the bus to work and chit chat to whoever's sitting around them on the bus. And as they're walking into the company front door, they'd chit chat to anybody around. Sometimes they would get a coffee for the person at the front desk, the CEO of these big global companies. However, Samsung and many leaders in East Asia, they usually have a private entourage taking them from their home to work, several people going ahead of them to open doors. They're not supposed to slow down with any of the, what they say is the small trivial things that somebody else's job. For example, somebody in the kitchen or the front door person, they may give the coffee to them. You're not supposed to slow down the CEO to go look for a newspaper or look for a coffee. That idea that the top of the hierarchy, they generally say, is supposed to be just focused on the very big details all the time. And this is generally saying that the leader should be down working with the people. That's how I understand it. And the idea that the people working, the staff, basically feel like they made those decisions. They built the company. They created these results. When was the last time you saw Samsung saying in news that the people over here did great work? They created the new phone versus the company made the phone. Or any company in East Asia talking about how the people working, the workers, are the ones that created the whole organization. In my opinion, that seems a little bit more rare than in other organizations in Europe, for example, or in Scandinavia, where they will say that other department needs a round of applause because that department created this new product that created a lot of success. So I think that idea of top level management, it's still not very well developed. And yet, who created this? Who is Lao Tzu? 6th century BC Chinese philosopher. So it's like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, this idea was basically developed, and yet it's still not being followed. So while we go through today's talk, I want you guys to start suggesting a lot. I want you involved to talk about what is a leader in your mind, and what are you doing about it if you want to be a leader, and who can you learn from? Are you surrounding yourself with the best people to learn from? So, Jungo, could you try to summarize all of that gobbledygook I just said?
So those are the quotes from the famous leaders in Western country and the Eastern country, but the ideas stated by the Lao Tzu is not applied in the Asia, even though he said it a long time ago.
Oh, I hope you're gonna fight with Pia, but keep going, go ahead.
I think I'm done.
Sorry for interrupting you. Did you have anything else to say, or were you generally finished there?
No, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Pia, could you be a leader and help Jung-ho raise his own understanding of what we're talking about?
We're talking about the difference between a boss and a leader, and I think the boss idea is more focused in Asia because of the hierarchy system. So we're trying to a different approach.
I thought I heard something different from you a little bit a few minutes ago. Go ahead. Sorry, be bad. I'll be quiet. Continue what you were about to say.
No, I think I didn't pay enough attention to Jong-ho's answer to fully answer that.
So I think I heard Jung-ho was saying that generally what they're talking about here is people in New York work differently than people in China. And so people in New York or Scandinavia, Norway, Finland, Sweden, those leaders get down and work side by side with the staff. So the staff sometimes don't notice those leaders, and the staff are sometimes able to see their own fruits of their efforts. They're able to see their own developments, the products they made. However, I think what Jong-ho is talking about is that's usually quite different in East Asia. In East Asia, usually the leader is at the top and he very clearly tells everybody what to do, and the ideas are generally his, and he's saying, you do this, this team does this team does this, and then the company grows. Is that what you were saying, Jung-ho? So New York is different.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I want to fight with you. I want you guys to go beyond that, because who created this? This quote, I believe, is saying the opposite. This quote is saying a true leader gets down and does the work with the people. Do you see that here? First of all, do you see the idea that the leader is not supposed to be at the top? The leader should be mixing with the people, talking with the people, interacting with the workers, the staff, so that the staff are able to develop ideas. Do you see that here?
Yes, but would that in Asia mean that there's a boss and then there's a leader within the team that supports the team? Because the boss clearly doesn't have the same role as the leader?
You mean, well, now we're getting into a completely different topic, like the idea of a founder or the chairman of the board that gets most of the pay and the profits, for example. My family in Walmart get almost all of the money that Walmart creates, while some other people are working and leading the Walmart. Yeah, that's a different story. I'm talking about the CEO of a company, a traditional company that usually is going to the company Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, regular job, working, managing people in that building. So that type of person that I'm talking about, whether you call them a leader or a manager, that's the focus. So that manager has to work in the same building as the people or the staff. But how you view them is important. What they do inside that building with those people is important. And so this is getting deep, really philosophical, lots of philosophical ideas here. So I'm going to move on quickly, but the idea is, many people say in Asia, you need one person to make all decisions and tell people what to do. That one person is at the top of the hierarchy and doesn't usually associate with people at the bottom. That one person at the top, they will make decisions and give it to the next level, the VPs. The vice presidents will interpret that and give it to the directors. The directors will take it and interpret it and give it to the managers. Managers give it to the regular staff. That type of thing. It's just stopping at each border. That's generally what a lot of people say is important in China, Japan, Russia, Korea, Vietnam. However, this quote is saying something different. So the idea of a hierarchy, and the hierarchy, the CEO stays just at the top and doesn't really interact with the people at the bottom, that thought that's very popular today, and it's still in many textbooks and many articles, I want you to chew it up. I want you to really analyze it, especially today, because the best management quotes and management systems created by Sun Tzu, Art of War, thousands of years ago, or Lao Tzu, 6th century BC, they're saying that the leader, the best leader, when the staff barely know he exists, because he's what do you call it? He's mixed with the staff. So the staff think he's just one of the staff. That's what I interpret here. And then he talks little, and when the work is done, the staff say, we did it, not the top CEO. That is what I think a lot of people would say is the Scandinavian idea. When everybody's equal, we can say this. In Norway, Finland, Sweden, everybody, young kids, old kids, people in engineering, even though you could make jokes about them, they're supposed to be the same as people in the marketing versus people in the accounting versus people in the janitorial services, people in the construction services. Everybody is supposed to be equal in Scandinavia. Very different in East Asia. And so this could seem like it's a quote just for Sweden or just for Scandinavia. But I want you to see beyond that, that the good leaders, even in a hierarchy, should try to involve the people so the people feel like they have a say. And we know the idea of the X motivation theory and the Y motivation theory and the Z motivation theory. Hopefully you guys are aware that X theory of motivation, some people, they don't really like extra responsibility and they want the boss to look over them and push them to do some great work. Versus the Y motivation, those type of people, they like responsibility, they like doing things themselves, and they like the boss just to open the door, give them the resources, and those people develop things on their own. And then the Z theory is different. Jacob here, Ulugbeck, do you guys remember what is the Z theory of management or motivation? It generally comes from Japan. Generally, the idea of management and leadership in Japan is the ideas start at the bottom of a Z or the bottom of a Z. Every worker at the bottom, if anybody has a good idea, they talk amongst themselves, and then that is promoted to their manager. And their manager digests it and thinks about it, maybe might change the wording a little bit and give it to his manager, and then he gives it to his director, and he gives it to the vice president, then the vice president gives it to the CEO, and then the board of directors, the top CEO, they will take a look at it, and then if that's good, they will accept it, and it will go back down through the chain of command so that the people at the bottom, the staff, actually implement it. And so it's the workers' ideas that the CEO implements. In some people, they say that the staff in Japan lead the organization and just the CEO signs off on things that are thought of and approved by people at the bottom. That is closer to what we're talking about here. But at the same time, it shouldn't just be a hierarchy. It should be the idea that you don't just filter yourself around the vice presidents or the directors. You should be aware of everything. Sun Tzu, Art of War. You know your terrain. You know your people. You know the enemy better than you know yourself. You know your MBTI personality, character code, your learning style, your communication style, and you try to understand the other important people even better, including the staff. You walk around, you see what the staff are doing. You see what the workers are talking about, what they're happy about creating, and what really bothers them or pisses them off. And then you can make informed decisions from what some people say down in the trenches. So this is actually created for Chinese, Lao Tzu, 6th century BC, but most people still only understand it as a Scandinavian thing. That's laissez-faire or participative management style. So please be aware that there is difference. Any questions about that? That's kind of confusing. Or are you guys sick of it? You want me to move on to this is the next slide? Questions? Any questions going once? Twice? Okay. We also talked about these leaders, this whole idea of who are great leaders today. So this is from Fortune, and Fortune is talking about who are, in their opinion, the best leaders. And it's not just the prime ministers of countries or the people that make vaccines that save the world. They're talking about most people may do things a certain way, but the leader sees a different way that they think is better, and they do that different thing, even though everybody else is saying, do this, and we should do this. That is strange, that's bad. So a leader is going against, many times going against what is popular, or going against the herd, going against the stream, going against the flow to do something newer and better, and doing it quickly. So these are all different examples. We've talked about lots of these last class. So we've also went through this idea. Can you guys remember, what do leaders do? Do they smile more or smile less? According to this researcher that researched leaders in North America, what did she find were leadership traits?
She said the leaders smile less.
Correct. Leaders smile less. Why?
Because they want to present their emotions less and not moved by audience.
Good interpretation. What I heard is that the followers that were not leaders, they were aware that somebody else is a leader, and they're just trying to make that person happy with them. So just by being a follower, not a leader, those people smile more to try to make the leader like them, to pull them up more. So basically the regular staff are smiling more, maybe to kiss ass. It's not a nice thing to say, but that's what I understood. Your interpretation is better than mine. Any other questions about number one? Ready to go on to number two? Okay, number two. Do you remember what your answer was? What was the answer from this research?
The leaders interrupt.
The leader here interrupts more, right? And I shared with you several articles in the recent weeks talking about negotiations. And generally with international negotiations, a lot of research says the best negotiators usually do not interrupt. They usually allow somebody to say your crazy idea, and then you will listen very carefully, take some of the information out of your crazy idea, and then show that the real facts, the real answer is completely different, so that you don't really have a comeback because we've used your argument kind of against you. And so they will listen, they will not interrupt, use your information, and then show the better way. So there is some research that's contradicting this. And again, most of this, I believe, this lady is focused mostly on American leadership information. So let's talk about the world. Next, what do leaders do? Do they hold eye contact more or do they hold eye contact less? And I hope I hear something interesting from you today, especially because today I have no idea who I'm talking to because am I leading in a classroom that's empty? Everybody's just online. So what do leaders do?
I think it was like almost a trick question because when you talk to them, they don't hold eye contact that much, but if they talk to you, they're very intense with their eye contact.
Yes, so there's two of you, the answers are here. The leaders, according to this lady, they hold eye contact more when telling you their ideas. But if you are telling them ideas, they're going to be looking around, maybe like Sun Tzu Art of War, checking out the environment, checking out the train, checking out what other people are saying. Even though you're talking to them, in my mind, traditionally people think it's rude if I look away, but her research says her leaders generally don't look at the person talking to them. They're looking, collecting other information at the same time as that they listen. Some people say maybe it's because of politics, because anybody that is suggesting a good idea, if they have very good ideas, they could be the new leader. But if you promote them by looking at them when they talk, yes, you're agreeing they could be a new leader, but if you're looking away, everybody may think that you think they're not that good, so their idea may not be adopted as well. So it could be just a political strategy. So it's both answers here. Next, what do leaders do? Do they pace around or do they stand still? What did her research show?
The research said the leaders will stand still.
Yes. And I had a comment because this was done a little while ago. What is your comment if you're leading by Zoom, if you're leading online, if you're leading by a lot of videos? Do you have to change that and just talk like this? Is this more of a leadership idea? If I'm standing talking to you saying you should stand still? Or is this idea and getting you guys to really understand how this should change, is this better with my body movement and hand gestures?
I think especially in the digitalized world where you don't see the people, it's very important to not stand still, but give the pace a little bit to encourage people to talk, because you're kind of anonymous in your online world and you maybe don't feel the need to participate as much. And I think in the real world, I think I set the answer pace, because I think leaders should encourage people to bring out their best in themselves. So the whole idea of just standing still and looking what people do, I don't really think it works for every leadership style.
Explain more. How does pacing back and forth encourage you, Pia, to do more or to do better?
Because if the leader just stands still, I don't really feel the need to do anything either. But if the leader encourages me to do something, then maybe I take it on my own to develop myself more. So it's probably more of a supportive style, I think.
Okay, that whole idea of myself right now, can you see me trying to show you? Yeah,
keep going.
My head. That encourages you to keep talking, to keep explaining, to keep leading. Versus if I'm just standing still, not pacing, it encourages you to, I don't know, be quiet and go to sleep. Yes, so I think the key word you just said is digital. If you're working digitally, if you're working online, where people can't actually interact with you, they can't smell you, they can't actually hear as much of your voice going up and down, then yes, you need to have a better way to motivate other people. And the body language sometimes does motivate people. However, we're still talking about international management and leadership. She's talking about USA. How are you supposed to hold your face in an interview in Korea for a very important job, or in Korea or China or Japan when you're negotiating a $100 million hotel purchase? Are you supposed to be going like, no, that's too crazy, that's too expensive? Or are you supposed to be saying, thank you for that information, I will take that back to my people and get back to you soon? What is the East Asian style of facial expression which the culture encourages?
Well, in Japan, I would say it's probably go back to your people and talk about it. But in Korea now, I'm not sure, because you said that they're sometimes very emotional when negotiating. So maybe I'm not the expert here.
John, would you like to explain a little bit more about what your grandmother or your grandfather say? What do Korean traditional people say to young people as far as smiling? Are they supposed to smile and laugh, ha, 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 with their mouth open and wrinkle their eyes and use lots of hand exposure, hand gestures? Or are they generally, is it more polite to cover their mouth when they're smiling and not really the facial expressions very much?
I think pacing is important to interact with the audience during any presentations or any events. So I believe that Asians, they also are aware of pacings. So one of the methods which leaders do to make the audience participate in the event is they use the MC or the interrogator. They hire someone to make the event active, and the MC will move a lot, and they will make people participate a lot, but the leaders will stand still, so that audience, like East Asian audience, might think the leaders have a deep insight, and the leader would not be emotional whenever some situations happens, and he will be pretty wise about some decisions. So
I hear two things from you. I hear you're describing younger people, or when people are managing younger people, they do things like at a rave party, and the DJ or somebody with the speaker is encouraging people to party and get really, really excited. However, my specific question is, most leaders in Asia are usually very old. They're probably in their 60s or 70s by now. And so my question was, what do people that age say young people should do? So what does your grandmother, what does your grandfather, what do old people usually tell young people in Korea or throughout East Asia? Do they tell you, don't do that. Stop moving your hands so much. Stop moving your legs so much. Stop moving around so much. What are you doing showing your teeth when you're smiling? Have you guys heard that before? In Korea, the older generation usually don't show their facial expressions too much, even if they're laughing. And if they are laughing, usually they cover their mouth because they're trying to hide that pacing of their face, that movement of their face. They're supposed to control everything almost like a soldier. That's the best way. Anything else is not supposed to be good. So you try to hold that. Have you heard that before, Jungo? Old people telling young people, try to act something like a soldier. Don't move too much.
Maybe not for my generations, but maybe from the parents' generation.
Okay, yeah, the older people, yes, they will say those things to the younger people. However, things are changing nowadays, especially when it's online. So this idea that she says stands still, according to her research, I want you guys to see, whoever says they're a leader, whoever says they're an expert, I want you to be able to take that information and critically analyze it, knowing what is reliable and what is not. Why? Does it work in this other country? Does it work with this other group of people that have different values? Because in different groups of people, the answers should change. And this is currently acceptable. Maybe not, I wouldn't even say currently. I would say this is acceptable for North American management before everybody had to be working online. So the people that went to meetings, yes. But in other countries, it's changing. Next, I would like you guys to maybe tear this all up, but what do leaders do? Do they nod as they speak, or do they hold their head still as they speak? What did she say was the North American response? Jacovier, do you remember?
Yeah, she said they do hold their heads still as they speak, as far as I remember.
Right, they usually hold their heads still as they speak is what she was saying. The answers basically are capitalized. All of what she was saying was the answer was capitalized. So it's 5B, 4B, 3, it was tie, depending on who you're actually looking at or listening to. 2, it's A, and number 1, it's B. So that is part of her research. However, another part of the research from the same person says you're supposed to use a lot of hand gestures. Leaders are supposed to use a lot of hand gestures. And in Japan and Korea, there is a popular expression that basically says the empty can makes the most noise, or a pebble in an empty can makes a lot of noise. What they're talking about is somebody's brain that doesn't have, somebody that has a small brain in a big head talks a lot of garbage and they make a lot of noise, versus very intelligent, smart people generally stay quiet. That is a popular expression in Japan and in Korea. So this whole idea of what do leaders do? They nod as they speak. Do they hold their head still as they speak? All of these things are different depending on who you are. Here, she says, use lots of hand gestures, but in Japan and Korea, if you use lots of hand gestures, if you're moving your body a lot of people in Japan, China, and Korea, they will say that you're probably not that intelligent. You're probably not really good leadership material if you're too much bing, 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 which is the popular expression. Also, she says you're supposed to use a lot of emotional language. So try and don't misunderstand. It doesn't mean you son of a me or start yelling at somebody. That's a little bit different. She could relate that to Donald Trump. He got emotional when he was talking to certain people, but I believe the better interpretation is you should try to understand the emotions of your staff. Try to understand the emotions of the people around you you're trying to lead and talk to their emotions. If you connect with their emotions, like having family relationships and talking about their younger daughter's birthday or the younger son's soccer championship game, that type of discussion gets them more emotional and they will connect with you and like you much more than if you're just straight business. So her other research talks about this. Use hand gestures, use emotional language, use the color blue. They say blue is better than red in her research, and know your numbers. What they're talking about with numbers is when you are trying to be a leader, you need to know your stuff. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your income statement, balance sheet, your cash flow details. If you don't know the basic numbers, you can't be a leader. If you need to rely on somebody else, especially in East Asia, and you don't know those numbers, then you are not really the leader. So be aware of those details. Any questions about any of this stuff?
No questions from me, but I just want to remind we have 15 minutes left.
Yes, so I want you guys to start talking about your information. Either talk about your research and be a leader teaching somebody some of those details, or let's get into that whole idea here. I've already talked about that. So what would you say? What is the experience that you are most proud of with some leader that you understand? If you have leadership experience, great. But if not, what is a leader that you know of and what made you think they are a good leader? Any of you? Ulebek, can you identify who is a leader that you know of and what experience did you observe that make you think they are a good leader? Same thing, Pia, same thing, Jomo, Ulebek, all of you guys. What experience that you are most proud of associated with a leader?
I think I can share my experience during when I was in military service. So in the military service, there is a clear hierarchy systems, and we know who is the leaders. But most of the boss and the leaders in military system, they're kind of in the old generations, and they're kind of forcing all the soldiers to do work and like a physical. Okay, they're they're kind of forcing soldiers. But the new one of the new young leader came to our military base, and he was kind of in the high positions, and then we are kind of used to got forced by boss to do something, but he became the first person that he started to do something by himself. Like one day we had to dig a hole of 30 meters with a shovel. We used to do it from like 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. But he came at 9 a.m. and he started to do it by himself. And the soldiers started to watch him, and then we started to follow him because we feel like he's in this activities and he's helping us, even though he's in the high positions. So we started to follow him until we finished our military service.
Okay, great. So you respect the person that actually walks the walk, talks the walk, whatever. The person that does what they're talking about. Okay, great. I definitely understand what you're talking about. Who else?
I know one Czech. I mean, he's a Czech billionaire, but like he wouldn't be considered a billionaire in US dollars. But he's a really rich guy, and he has a few companies. And when COVID started, he gave all of his employees masks that weren't really like easily available at the time, and also like to their families, and also to basically people that he really needed in the like at work at the time, even though that they were scared because of COVID, because at the time no one really knew much about it. He raised their pay so they have at least some motivation to actually do the job because he really needed them.
Good. So a leader is somebody that cares for the other people. They're not just doing it for the money. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, good. What about Pia or Jacob here?
I don't really have such great examples, but I think I experienced that in university and school where people, or even my parents, when they encouraged me to do something and kind of led me on to follow my dreams or pursue my goals. So I think a person that really encourages you and helps you, or just gives you a little push to do your work, be it your parent or someone in university who tells you to do some work or to maybe take this course because it could be good for you. So I think people who encourage you in this way are also good leaders.
Do you mean somebody that says, come on, study, 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 stop going and partying, stop watching TV, stop playing video games, study, study, study? Is that what you mean?
No, that's maybe a bit too much, but yeah, maybe kind of like this to make you aware that this is a possibility that you have. They don't push you to it, but they at least encourage you and say, hey, maybe think for yourself about it because it could be good for you, so that you get this extra motivation to really do it by yourself instead of being pushed into it.
Okay, great. Encouraging people, not just saying do it and then no questions asked, fire them if they don't, or in the military with the old style of leadership, as we heard, if you don't do it, you have to clean up the kitchen or the bathrooms or do 100 push-ups, something like that. It's more just encouraging for the sake of your benefit. Okay, maternalistic or paternalistic, fatherly or motherly style of leadership. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So it's more caring in a way.
Or caring. Okay. What about Jacobir or Ulugbeck? Haven't heard from you.
I think great leaders have in common is they are self-aware. Knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, I think, is important. And they take more responsibility.
Okay.
Great leaders.
They take more responsibility. That's a good point. Good. So we've gone through this. Let's take a look at a few more of these things. Oops. What was the most disappointing experience with a leader? For example, Donald Trump insulting so many other non-American cultures, or even the Black cultures, or Muslim American or Asian American. He would insult people that weren't exactly his style. The WAS, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant or whatever. I think that was very disappointing. And the whole idea of not being very interested in learning to develop, just forcing people to do things because he thinks it's the best. That was disappointing to me. What about you guys? What was the most disappointing experience you've had or you've seen from another leader? Can you try to tie this into international management? For example, somebody like Donald Trump going into China saying China's bad or not really caring about Korea at all. That whole idea of, India is not worth his time and effort. That whole idea is very disappointing if he doesn't care about the other country. What do you guys feel is an example of a problem you've seen with leadership?
Maybe that I would say with the same guy that I was talking about before. One time he stopped at our house and like sit it down, and he was just talking, and he talked about that he cheated on his wife many times. And he's also a psychologist, and he was completely okay with it. And I personally was really disappointed with him because like of the values and stuff. However, I think that to tie it with the management somehow, I would say that we shouldn't accept certain bad things that we do and more try figure them out.
Okay, my response to that, to definitely try to help understand different possible views. I have experienced the exact same feelings as you. I've seen the exact same thing with different people. For example, I used to work, I'm not going to say company name, but I used to work with a world-class organization, definitely global. They have been dissolved now, but when I went into meetings early in the morning, there was one day that I went in and one top executive, it was his birthday, and he arrived to the meeting a little bit late and already a little bit drunk, and almost everybody else started saying, hey, you know, good job, because he was already starting to drink, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. 7 a.m. he was already starting to drink, and the people around them gave him basically encouragement. They liked it. I was disappointed. And then he went on and he was saying he had his breakfast at home with his wife, and they had a champagne breakfast, and then he met his girlfriend in a hotel and got it on and had more alcohol, and so he was a little bit drunk. And so they went from being excited that he could drink a lot to being extra excited, almost hysterical, very, very excited, promoting him to be the group leader just because he had several different women. And then he was saying that he had another girl he was supposed to be meeting later for lunch and later that night. And that just made everybody go crazy. I was disappointed with that, but again, I had to research, and at that time, the idea of stamina was very important. The best leaders at that time and in that environment, they said, had great ability, number one, and they just left it blank. They would say, you have to have ability, you have to have stamina, and you have to have this. Drinking ability was one of them. And so, can any of you guys guess what does it mean to have stamina? In Korea, the traditional leaders, a lot of people managing big organizations, they generally respect people that have the ability, they respect people that have stamina and drinking ability, but it is changing. What does that mean to have stamina?
Maybe like accepting something bad that will lead us to something better. Like even though that we do not maybe want to do something, we do it because it can bring something good in the long term.
Okay, good guess. In the meeting that I was at, they were actually saying stamina was a guy's ability to satisfy not just a woman, but a woman either many times or even better, they were saying satisfy many women. So sexual ability is what they were saying was the stamina. I feel uncomfortable talking about this, so I'll just summarize. What the research actually showed is somebody that can understand other people and drink and take care of some other people, especially drinking, was usually a sign of a good salesperson. And a good salesperson was able to help the company grow, and that was very good. And by satisfying the other person, that was part of the stamina. And by being able to drink lots of alcohol, that was another thing. So in some parts of Korea, again, this was several years ago, it was good. It is changing quite a lot. Be aware of what was good and bad about each. We're almost out of time. I just wanted you guys to think about more of these things. For example, what leadership lessons and observations and experiences have you learned or provided? If you guys can share this on Facebook, that would be great. There's people from several different countries here. Try to write down this, and then what is an example in our Facebook group? What is a lesson from leadership you have observed and experienced? What should everybody learn especially related to international management, East Asian management. And then the whole idea is being a leader different from being a manager? That whole concept is the big idea of managing is telling people what to do. Leading is basically being at the front saying, come, follow me, let's do this. So are these things different? Depends on how you're leading people. Oops. There is a framework that the research shows, and inside our weekly folder, there's several different articles explaining this stuff. The idea of a leader with followers and context, everything goes together to make a leader. It's not just one all by themselves. And the idea of leader, you have to have certain characteristics, traits, behavior, skills. So check out what you have. What are your MBTI? What is your Carl Jung typology characteristics and traits? And then know the people around you. Learn from big data, learn from analytics, learn from insights programs. What are the attitudes, the culture, the education, motivations, expectations? What are the key words they're using, and focus on those. And then the context, the internal and external environment. Know the big picture. All of that impacts your leadership ideas.
Professor, I think some students need to go to another class. It's also time for us to finish the class.
Yes, I was just trying to show this last thing, and then we're finished. This whole development of traits. Certain traits you need to focus on for your leadership in theory. The idea of the traits. Make sure you know your personal characteristics. Again, that's the MBTI. Your behavior, task-centered versus people-centered. You must be aware of both, especially what the people want, what the analytics, the insights say. And the integrative, combining the integrative, a range of things all together. How can you get complex ideas to come together? And then the contingency, have a backup plan. You know your plan is something, we'll strive for it, but don't allow failure at one step to completely destroy you. Have backup plans like plan 2, plan 3, or plan A, plan B, plan C. So please continue that with whatever you're going to be doing going forward. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing your answers, your comments to some of these in our class Facebook group. And I look forward to seeing your presentations and comments about your other peers in Facebook as we go forward. Thanks, guys. Any
Thanks,
comments?
Professor.
Weekend.